If your business is growing but you're constantly drowning in tasks, you are probably approaching scaling the wrong way. So many people in this day and age are still using a 2019 playbook, a 2019 way of doing business, and they don't even know it. So let's have a real conversation about how this is holding your business back. Let's rewind and actually revisit what doing business in 2019 was like. 2019 was the ultimate hustle era. If you don't remember, it was all about scaling to massive levels, being everywhere, and constantly launching more and more and more. The dominant narrative of doing business in 2019 was all about running ads and hiring a VA to do the heavy lifting in your business for you, while you sat back, launched some sort of course, and eventually grew a massive team that would eventually replace your need to even be in the business. Essentially, that playbook was all about expanding rapidly. That was basically the key takeaway from 2019 is hit the floor running, get things done, hustle hard, expand as quickly as you can, whether it's in terms of headcount in your business or in terms of your service offering, and that's how you'll make it to your first $1 million. So let's break down what has changed. First of all, the cost of doing business has gone up dramatically. So for example, it seems like there are more tools than ever to select from and that can really support your business. There's a ton of them and they eventually add up, especially if you are somebody who's a solopreneur or you just have a very small team to do the work. Now, layer on top of that the cost of labor. So many people can't truly afford to have several employees in their business because it's not just the cost of their salary, of course, but you also have to think about benefits. You also have to think about taxes. You also have to think about the cost of continuously upskilling your employees and ensuring they're able to do the work that they need to do within the business. All of that to say, while it's never been easier to do business in history, it's also not as cheap as it was, relatively speaking, in 2019. Even if you look at the cost of ads, so many small businesses are actually priced out of being able to run ads because the cost of running ads alone has gone up dramatically, and also the cost of paying an individual or paying some sort of agency to run your ads completely feels like it's something only reserved for big businesses, despite the fact that this was honestly the bread and butter of how so many businesses ran in 2019. So look, you can't just throw people at a problem and hope things work out. That's just not a sustainable way of doing business anymore. Another area where people are still playing in the 2019 sandbox is the fact that overall, your audience is just way more discerning. You really have to think back and remind yourself that in 2019, honestly, people were just impressed by polish. They were impressed by somebody being super professional. And honestly, if you were wearing a suit, we were buying what you were selling. Like, there was just such a low barrier when it came to gaining trust with an audience, as long as you could present yourself as somebody who was professional. But so many people are just not buying it anymore. And unfortunately, so many of those people within different business realms, within marketing, within coaching, within consulting, within photography, whatever industry you're in, have actually burned so many clients. I know someone who several years ago hired a really well-known photographer in order to shoot some photos of her and her team for her organization. This is somebody who presents as very well-known, very established. They're connected with so many other influential people in their space. And guess what? He took their money and ran. Literally, they could not get a hold of him. They just had to cut their losses, despite the fact that they never received the service. And there are so many cases of this. There's a ton of examples of people leaning on the folks in the space who are well known, who are reputable, and who show up and presented themselves as polished and professional. But here's the thing, that's not how they acted. And it's burned enough people to the point where it's not enough for somebody to purchase from you. you. Now, people are not buying just off of a shiny brand. They need depth. They really need to feel a sense of trust. And as a potential consumer, they want that clarity on what it is you're selling and the fact that you can deliver on it. And I definitely think all of those things are valid and fair, but they're honestly barriers that you just didn't have to consider as much in 2019. And here's another thing. Ultimately, consumer behavior, especially on different platforms that we all know and love, has just completely changed. So if you guys can remember, like the biggest word of 2019 was probably funnel. Funnel. Like everything was just about, you just need a funnel. But the reality is, if you were to take that same logical funnel from 2019 and try and use it in your business today, it wouldn't work. Not because the steps aren't meant to be in those order or that the information isn't valid, but it's just that consumers themselves have changed. Guys, our attention spans are completely fried. The amount of people who actually will watch a YouTube video like this until the very end is basically non-existent. So think about it. That means that same person is not going to go through a 6-part funnel system in order to be able to check out on your service. The attention spans just are not the same. And on top of that, consumers are not only more discerning, like I mentioned, but they are just savvier. So I remember one thing that always used to really annoy me about funnels is you'd go through this funnel in order to learn something, in order to get something. A lot of the times it's a webinar or some sort of masterclass. But I always hated this idea of like, yeah, it's gonna be a live masterclass that you can only join on this date, which happened to be the next day at like 7 p.m. And it was just a total lie. Like, it was not a live class. I don't know why they were pushing that narrative so hard. Again, consumers, we know, like, we just want the truth, and those things break our trust in somebody. And on the note of our attention spans just being shorter and consumers just being savvier, this is also one of the reasons why in this day and age, things need to be more simple than ever. Ultimately, complexity no longer scales well. Having more service offerings, having more people involved in your business, being on a million different platforms, you're just piling it on and piling it and piling it. And ultimately, none of these things are helping simplify your delivery. And the reason why that's such a big issue is because it also just makes it way harder to grow. Growing and scaling, it's not about adding more and having more layers. It's really about simplifying and ensuring that there's as little friction as possible. So let's talk about what you really need to do in order to scale this year and beyond. So what we really need to do is take the 2019 model and completely flip it on its head. We really want to focus on depth before we focus on width. What do I mean by that? Well, we talked about how 2019 was really all about doing as much as possible, rolling out as many offers as possible, launching as many courses as possible. But what you should be doing now is focusing on really just a core service offering to your customers. And the deeper you can be with who you're serving and the outcome that they're getting, that's actually going to be more profitable for you. I did a whole video on the business model of the future, which I will link above and down below in the description box. And one of the things that I talked about is the fact that as we move forward in society, as AI plays a bigger role in our society, people are going to need to be hyper experts. So no longer be a generalist and do everything. Really go deep on who you're serving and the problem that they're facing. That's what people are willing to pay the big bucks for. And if I use examples from my own life, there are 2 instances in my life where I had to hire law firms. I didn't go to generic law firms. No, I went to law firms that specialize on solving such a specific problem, and it was a problem that I was experiencing. And guess what? I paid them a lot of money, but ultimately I, as a consumer, was really satisfied because they were able to get the job done. Another thing that we're doing now and ditching from 2019 is we are leaning into systems and not just on rapidly expanding headcount and increasing the amount of people in our business. I talk about this literally all the time. I don't know how many times more I can say it. Business owners need to prioritize automation and AI before bringing somebody into their business. It's really expensive to have somebody in your business nowadays. It's still cheaper to figure out better workflows or lean on the right tools before just thinking more people is going to solve your problems. What we're also leaving behind is hustle culture. This idea of glamorizing a 80-hour, 100-hour work week. Something has shifted in society in a really good way, in my opinion, where we no longer put work on top of everything. We recognize that our physical health is important. We recognize that our mental health is important. We recognize that community and spending time with our family and loved ones is important. And we're not willing to trade all of those things just to have money. I saw a quote recently that's something along the lines of how typically we have 99 problems, but once your health fails, then you only have one problem, meaning nothing is more important than your health, right? And when I say health, I'm talking about your physical health, your mental health, and all the things that support it. So as we exit this hustle era and enter an era that really prioritizes us as people and doesn't think of us as machines, it is critical that we step into our CEO mindset, our CEO energy, and ruthlessly protect our calendar and ensure that we are being more efficient with our time so that we can achieve more by working less. Remember, you cannot copy and paste old, outdated strategies and apply them to today. The internet has changed, the marketplace has changed, the world has changed. And also, you have changed. So it's time to stop putting more pressure on having more people in your business and expanding as rapidly as possible. Instead, focus on auditing your business, simplifying your business, and work to make micro changes that rebuild your business with intentionality. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe. It really makes a difference. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.